Okay, so building something new, a company, maybe a product, super detailed multi-year plan. It's like having this perfect map landscape that's constantly shifting under your feet.
Exactly. So the big question is, how do you actually find your way? How do you build something succeed even when you just can't know everything up front?
Well, that's what we're getting into today. We're going deep on a method built exactly for that kind of chaos, the lean startup.
Right. Based on that really influential book by Eric Ries, we've been looking at a pretty detailed summary, pulling out the key stuff.
And our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack those core ideas, those practical tools. We want to show you how this approach, aims to help build a sustainable business.
The really cool thing, I think, the book defines a startup way more broadly. It's basically any group trying to create something new where things are super uncertain.
So if you're trying to innovate, build something new, doesn't matter where these ideas, they're probably for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's dig in then.
So where do we start? Well, the lean startup borrows a lot from lean manufacturing, actually.
Oh yeah, like the efficiency focus, minimizing waste.
Exactly. Small batches, continuous improvement, all that. But it applies those ideas not just to, say, building the thing, but to the whole process of figuring out if you should even build it in the first place.
That makes sense. Because when you're starting something new, the biggest waste isn't always like inefficient code or slow production lines.
Right. It's spending all that time and energy building something nobody actually wants.
That's the real killer. Your most precious resource isn't just cash, it's your time, your team's effort.
Precisely. And that leads to this really fundamental mind shift the approach requires. Early on, a startup's main goal isn't just hitting targets or making money.
It's learning.
It's learning. Yeah.
Learning what specifically?
Learning what your potential customers truly value. Which problems are actually worth solving for them. And, crucially, how to build a sustainable business around that.
Okay, but not just any learning. You mentioned validated learning.
Yes, validated learning. That's key. It's not just intuition or guesswork.
Sounds rigorous.
It is. It means using real empirical data from actual customers to prove or disprove that you've learned something true and valuable about your business model.
So, are the things you're doing actually creating value? Are they moving you closer to a business that can sustain itself?
Or is it just, busy work? Activity that feels productive but doesn't actually get you anywhere. It's like applying the scientific method to your biggest business bets.
Okay, so instead of just having this grand vision and marching towards it blindly.
You have hypotheses. Things you believe to be true, but you need to test them.
I gotcha.
The book calls them leap of faith assumptions. These are the absolute core beliefs your whole idea rests on.
Like what? What are the big ones?
Usually, there are two main ones. The value hypothesis. Do people actually get value from this thing you're offering?
Okay.
And the growth hypothesis. How will you find and keep customers in a way that can actually scale up sustainably?
Right. Those sound like the make or break questions.
They are. They're the riskiest bits of your plan. The things you absolutely have to test first.
And you don't test them by writing a 50-page business plan.
No. You test them by building something. Getting something out there.
So the product itself is the experiment.
Exactly. And the result of that experiment, that's your validated learning, proof, or maybe lack of proof, for those core assumptions.
And that learning tells you what to do next. It's actually more important, initially anyway, than hitting some arbitrary revenue number or getting press.
Way more important, because it guides your next actions based on reality, not just hope.
And this whole cycle, this process, is driven by the core engine, right? The build, measure, learn loop.
That's the heart of it. Build, measure, learn. It's this constant feedback loop.
Okay, break that down.
You start with your ideas, those leap of faith assumptions. Based on those, you build something. Could be a simple feature, a whole product prototype, something designed specifically to test an assumption.
Okay, build. Then
you measure. You have to figure out how to track what happens when real users interact with what you build. Collect actual data.
And that data feeds into the last step.
Learn. This is where you analyze the measurements. Did the results match your hypothesis? What did you actually learn? That's your validated learning.
And crucially, that learning then informs the next build cycle.
Immediately. Do we keep going this way or do we need to change course? The absolute key here is speed. Minimizing the total time it takes to go through that entire loop.
Faster loops mean faster learn.
Exactly. More chances to get it right before you run out of time or money.
Okay, let's talk about that build part then, especially early on. How do you build fast enough to keep that loop turning quickly? This brings us to the MVP, right?
The minimum viable product, yes.
Yeah.
Probably the most famous concept from the book, and probably the most misunderstood, too.
How so?
Uh,
People think it just means building something really basic and cheap.
Yeah, or just the smallest possible feature set.
Yeah.
But it's more specific than that. It's the version of your product that lets you complete one full turn of the build, measure, learn loop
Right.
with the least amount of effort and the least development time possible.
So it's optimized for learning, not just for being minimal.
Exactly. Maximize learning, minimize effort. That's the goal of the MVP.
And the source we looked at had some great examples of this, like Dropbox.
Oh, the Dropbox video. Classic example. They didn't build the complex file syncing tech first.
No, they made a simple video showing how it would work and put it online.
Right, just to see if people would sign up, if they even wanted the idea of it. They tested the value hypothesis before writing tons of code. They learned people desperately wanted it.
That's smart. And the other one, food on the table, the grocery service.
Yeah, their first product was basically just one guy doing everything manually, a concierge MVP.
Like literally going to the store for one customer.
Pretty much. He'd curate the grocery list based on sales, buy the stuff. It sounds crazy inefficient, right?
Totally.
But it was the absolute fastest way for them to learn if that core concept, personalized grocery plans based on local deals, actually solved a real problem and provided value for someone.
So an MVP can be super low tech, even manual, as long as it helps you learn that crucial first thing.
Precisely. It's about getting that learning loop turning.
Okay, so you build your MVP, you put it out there. Now, measure. This sounds critical and maybe tricky.
Absolutely critical. And yes, tricky because traditional business metrics, they can be totally misleading for a startup or a new initiative.
How so?
Well, without really rigorous measurement, that build, measure, learn loop just breaks down. You think you're learning because you're busy, but you're not getting validated learning. You're flying blind.
You need to face the actual data, the reality it shows.
Exactly. And avoid the vanity metrics trap.
Ah, yes, vanity metrics. I've seen teams fall into that. Overall user numbers are going up, maybe total revenues increasing slightly.
And everyone feels good. Success.
But they don't actually know why those numbers are moving or which specific things they did are actually causing the growth. It's just numbers going up.
Yeah.
Confusing correlation with causation.
Right. And that's where something called innovation accounting comes in. It's a specific framework for measuring progress when you're doing something genuinely new and disruptive.
Okay, innovation accounting, how does that work?
It's got 3 basic steps. First, you establish a baseline. Right after you launch your MVP or run your first experiment, what do your key metrics look like? Get that snapshot.
Step 1, baseline. Got it.
Second, you tune the engine. You run specific targeted experiments designed to improve those baseline metrics based directly on your hypotheses.
Okay, so you're trying to move the needle deliberately.
Exactly. And then step 3, the big decision point.
Pivot or persevere.
That's the one. Based on the data from tuning the engine, have you actually learned something? Is the data validating your approach and showing real progress towards that sustainable business vision?
If yes.
You persevere, you keep refining, keep optimizing on the current path.
And if no, if the experiments just aren't moving those key metrics, if the hypothesis seems wrong.
Then you pivot. You make a significant change based on what you learned.
And the source mentions some specific techniques to measure better within this framework, like cohort analysis.
Oh yeah, cohort analysis is super powerful. Instead of looking at just total numbers over time, you group users who started using your product around the same time. Like everyone who signed up in January is one cohort, February is another.
You track each group separately over time.
Right. So if you make a change in March, you can see if it actually improved retention or engagement for the March cohort compared to the February cohort. It helps isolate cause and effect much better than just looking at cumulative totals.
That makes sense. It filters out the noise.
Exactly. And the metrics themselves, they need to be what Ries calls actionable, accessible, and auditable.
Okay, break those down. Actionable.
Means it shows clear cause and effect. If the metric changes, you know roughly why, and it gives you an idea of what actions to take next.
Accessible.
Means the whole team understands the metric. It's not some complex number only the data scientists get. It's clear, it's shared.
And auditable.
Means the data is credible. You can show where it came from, people trust it. You can talk to customers and see if the data matches their qualitative experience. It prevents you from, fooling yourself.
Right. Avoid those vanity metrics that make you feel good but don't actually help you decide what to do.
Precisely. You need metrics that drive learning and action.
So this whole cycle, build, measure, learn, fueled by validated learning, measured with innovation accounting. It all leads up to that crucial decision point, pivot or persevere.
It's the moment of truth, really.
And a pivot isn't just like randomly trying something else because the first thing didn't work.
No, no. It's very deliberate. It's a structured course correction. It's based on everything you've learned so far. You're deciding to test a new fundamental hypothesis about your product or your market or your growth strategy.
Okay, so strategic, not panicked.
Ideally, yes. And the book talks about a startup's runway, how much time or money you have left, not just in dollars, but in how many pivots you can realistically make.
Ah, interesting. So the faster you can cycle through build, measure, learn, and get to that pivot decision point.
The more chances you give yourself to find the right path before you run out of runway, speed of learning directly translates into more strategic options.
And there are different kinds of pivots, right? It's not just one thing.
Oh yeah, lots of types. For example, a zoom-in pivot. You might realize that one tiny feature of your bigger product is actually the thing people love most. So that feature becomes the entire product.
Okay, or the opposite.
A zoom-out pivot, what you thought was the whole product turns out to be just one feature of a much larger opportunity. You broaden your scope.
Makes sense. What else?
A customer segment pivot. You built something for, say, college students, but you learn through testing that actually small business owners are the ones getting massive value from it, so you refocus on them.
Or you might have the right customer, but you're solving the wrong problem for them.
Exactly. That's a customer need pivot. You targeted the right group, but the problem you thought was their biggest pain point wasn't. You learn about a more pressing need they have and pivot the product to solve that.
And you could pivot on the business model itself.
Yeah.
Right. How you make money or find customers.
Absolutely. Changes to how you capture value, your monetization strategy. Changes to your engine of growth, how you acquire customers sustainably. Changes to your channel, how you deliver the product. Even sometimes a technology pivot if a completely different tech approach could solve the core problem much better.
The main point seems to be that these are fundamental shifts driven by validated learning, not just small tweaks or iterations.
That's the core idea. It's about changing fundamental assumptions.
Okay, so that covers the steer part of the framework, navigating uncertainty using the BML loop, MVPs, careful measurement, and these pivot decisions. But what happens when you do find something that's working? When the data shows you're onto something sustainable? How do you step on the gas? How do you accelerate?
Right, that's the next phase. Accelerate. And you need to do it while still keeping that ability to learn and adapt. It's not about just scaling up the old, rigid way.
So how do you do that?
Well, one really crucial idea, again, borrowed from lean manufacturing, is using small batches.
Small batches. How does that work for, like, software or product development? Seems less obvious than making widgets.
Think about it in terms of learning cycles again. If you decide to build, say, 10 new features all at once in one giant batch that takes 6 months,
Okay.
you only get feedback on all 10 features way down the line when the whole batch is done, if half of them are duds or if the market shifted while you were building.
You've wasted a ton of time and effort building stuff nobody wants or needs anymore.
Exactly. But if you work in smaller batches, maybe build and release just 1 or 2 features every few weeks.
You finish units of work much faster.
Right. And you get feedback much, much sooner on a smaller chunk of work.
So if that small batch, that one feature, isn't resonating or has bugs,
You find out quickly. You can stop building more stuff like it, fix the issues, and learn from it immediately. You minimize the potential waste, and you dramatically speed up that feedback loop, even as you scale.
okay, small batches for faster learning and less waste. What else is key for acceleration?
A focus on sustainable growth. The book really emphasizes this. It's not about short-term bumps from, say, a big ad spend or a PR hit.
Right. It's about building mechanisms where growth fuels itself, often where new customers come from the actions of your existing customers. Compound growth.
Yes. And it outlines 3 main engines of growth.
Okay, what are they?
First is the sticky engine. This is all about user retention and engagement.
Keeping the customers you have.
Exactly. If your rate of acquiring new customers is consistently higher than the rate at which existing customers leave, that's called churn, then you grow. The bigger the gap between acquisition and churn, the faster your sticky growth compounds.
Makes sense. Keep the bucket from leaking.
You're-
What's next?
The viral engine. This is where growth comes primarily from your existing users spreading the word, like literally word of mouth or built-in referral mechanisms.
So customers bring in more customers?
Right. It's measured by the viral coefficient. For every customer you have, how many new customers do they bring in on average? If that number, the coefficient, is greater than 1, you get exponential growth. Though achieving true viral coefficient above 1 is rare and hard.
Okay, sticky, viral, and the third.
The paid engine. This is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You spend money to acquire customers through advertising, sales teams, whatever.
And the goal is to make more money from the customer over their lifetime than it costs you to acquire them.
Precisely. Growth accelerates here if you can either increase that lifetime value, LTV, per customer, or decrease the cost of acquiring a customer, and AR, or both. The profit from existing customers funds the acquisition of new ones, creating a feedback loop.
So sticky, viral, paid, those are the main ways growth sustains itself.
And most successful startups eventually focus heavily on optimizing just one of these engines that fits their specific business. Trying to master all three at once is usually too difficult.
Okay, now, to keep all this running smoothly, the build, measure, learn loops, the chosen growth engine, especially as you get bigger, you need the organization itself to be adaptable, right?
Yes, absolutely. You need adaptive processes, systems that are designed to automatically adjust and self-correct based on what's actually happening.
That sounds counterintuitive sometimes. Like when things go wrong,
Yeah.
isn't the first instinct just to push harder, work longer hours?
It often is, but the lean approach suggests doing the opposite, at least initially. When problems pop up that slow things down, could be a recurring bug, a bottleneck in customer support, anything.
Yeah.
An adaptive system encourages you, even forces you, to actually slow down for a moment to figure out why it happened, to find the root cause.
Instead of just patching the symptom and moving on.
Exactly. Invest time in fixing the underlying problem. The book mentions a simple but powerful technique for this: the 5 whys.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. You just keep asking why.
Pretty much. When a problem occurs, you ask, why did that happen? Then you take the answer and ask, okay, why did that happen? And you repeat it, maybe 5 times, maybe more, digging deeper each time.
Until you get past the surface symptoms.
And uncover the fundamental root cause, which is often, a flawed process or a training issue or a system design problem, not just an isolated mistake.
And by fixing that root cause,
You prevent the whole class of problems from recurring, which in the long run allows the entire system to run faster and more reliably. It's an investment in speed.
that makes a lot of sense. Fix the foundation.
Right. And finally, especially if you're trying to foster this kind of lean, innovative approach within a larger, maybe more traditional organization,
Yeah. How do you protect that fragile innovation?
you need to structure things carefully. The source mentions giving innovation teams scarce but secure resources,
Scarce but secure, meaning
meaning enough resources to get the job done, forcing them to be resourceful, but not so much that they get bloated. And secure means that funding isn't constantly threatened or needing rejustification every quarter. They need stability to run experiments.
okay. What else helps?
Giving them independent development authority, autonomy, the power to design and run their experiments without needing 15 layers of approval for every little decision.
Reduces friction, speeds up the loops.
Exactly. And also giving the team a personal stake in the outcome, whether that's through, specific incentives, recognition, or maybe even equity if it's an internal venture, aligning their success with the project's success.
And there was that idea of an innovation sandbox.
Yeah, that's a great practical technique. Basically, create a safe, contained space where these teams can run their experiments.
How'd it work?
It means the experiment might only affect, say, 1% of your customers, or only run on a specific non-critical part of the product. It minimizes the risk to the main business if the experiment goes wrong.
But it still allows the team to get real data and validated learning from real users.
Exactly. It lets innovation happen without jeopardizing the core operations.
Wow, okay. That was quite a journey through the lean startup framework. Feels like we covered a lot of ground.
We definitely did. We started right back at that core challenge, building new things when everything is uncertain.
And how the fundamental shift is towards defining entrepreneurship as management focused on validated learning, not just executing a predefined plan.
Then we really dug into that build, measure, learn feedback loop, how it's the engine for steering through the fog.
Identifying those critical leap of faith assumptions first.
Using minimum viable products, MVPs, to test those assumptions as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Relying on innovation accounting and genuinely actionable metrics to measure real progress, not just vanity.
And then making those crucial data-informed pivot or persevere decisions, changing course strategically based on what you've actually learned.
And then we moved into accelerate what to do once you have found a path that works.
Yeah, using things like small batches to keep learning fast even as you scale.
Understanding and really focusing on those sustainable engines of growth, sticky, viral, or paid.
And building an adaptive organization using tools like the 5 Whys to fix root causes, and structuring teams for autonomy and safe experimentation, like with the Innovation Sandbox.
So the big takeaway really seems to be about replacing that old model of blind faith and rigid, detailed upfront plans.
With a much more scientific, iterative process, it's about being disciplined and testing your assumptions.
Constantly seeking out that validated learning, finding out what customers really want, using actual data,
Minimizing wasted time and effort on building the wrong things.
and ultimately building a sustainable business by being willing and able to continuously adapt based on that learning.
Yeah, it provides a structured way to deal with that inherent uncertainty.
And let's circle back to that definition of entrepreneurship we kicked off with. Remember, managing institutions designed to create new products and services under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Right, it's way broader than just tech startups.
Absolutely. These principles, validated learning, MVPs, actionable metrics, the power of pivots, understanding growth engines, building adaptive systems, these aren't just abstract ideas for founders.
No, they're practical tools for anyone in any organization who's trying to innovate or launch something new. They give you a framework to systematically reduce risk and increase your chances of creating something that actually works.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you listening right now? Take a moment. Think about a project you're working on, or maybe just an idea you have, where there's a fair bit of uncertainty involved.
Where are your biggest leap of faith assumptions hiding? What are the core beliefs that have to be true for this thing to succeed?
And then ask yourself, how could you design the smallest, fastest possible experiment? Maybe some kind of really simple MVP, maybe just a conversation, maybe a landing page test to start getting some real validated learning about just one of those assumptions.
How could you start testing, measuring, and learning maybe even tomorrow instead of just planning and planning for months? That's really the challenge the lean startup puts forward.